I want to ask you 4 questions. When did you start squatting?
Let me think. I've been living in my squat for almost a year now.
The people there at the commune, just being around them, I feel really caught up into what's going on in Holland now, at least with the young people. And I think that what I've learned of their actions of squatting houses is...
And that's the beautiful thing about where we are today, is because we can say that we are the only people that came out of this entire history that actually meant what we said. And we said it was about affordable housing. These buildings will always be affordable housing.
Je bent de oprichter van de kroeg?
Ja, ik niet alleen hoor. Met 5 mensen zijn we deze kroeg begonnen. Ja.
Hoe lang heb je daarover gedaan en hoe ben je begonnen?
Nou, we hadden helemaal niks. Geen geld of wat dan ook. Dus we begonnen echt met een kratje bier op een vergadering en dat groeide langzaam.
Okay, it's recording. Yeah. Nice. Perfect. So what is invisible architecture to you guys?
I think to me it's a construction that kind of goes unseen by the society. That it's a building that is there but people ignore it and they don't want to see it. And inside this building, they create a whole society, a whole community. But the general society just ignores it and doesn't want to see it. And I think that's, to me, one side of invisible architecture, just the fact that it is there, but that people don't pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of also see that in 4 layers. Mm-hmm. The first one is the visibility aspect, how it's hidden in plain sight. It's kind of the seen but unseen. Mm-hmm. And has this interplay between being unconscious and kind of hidden. Mm-hmm. And then this other component is the urban vernacular techniques that they use. They're really designed by people, for people, and really just made spaces that were very functional. And another component is the silent practice that they had. They really blended in the background, so you didn't really have to know that they existed. Mm-hmm. And one last point is how they were very selfless in nature. They weren't really caring about themselves individually. Mm-hmm. They really wanted to work as a community. They had to rely on each other as a community, and I think that was really a key component.
Yeah. And I think to me it has kind of a double definition to me. It's not only about the building itself, it's also about creating a community inside these buildings. You can see it in Casa Masdeu, for example, where they are drinking tea together, working in the woods, working in the gardens, and doing these things together really creates a community. And that's also another side of the definition of invisible architecture to me. It's also about history and emotions. It's not only about the building itself.
And that's why I think architects don't need to make something really beautiful, mm-hmm. but it's more about the society and about the participatory project of the building. And it's not about making something just to make something.
And I think as you progress through the project, that as an architect, that we sometimes forget the emotional side of the design, and I think that's what invisible architecture is about.
I think that in France and Casa Masdeo in Spain and also the self-help housing in New York are good examples because they are kind of improvised and they are, like, I think in a way invisible because you don't see the people living there unless you go and explore intentionally. So that's why also, and then the community aspect of it, obviously, like they are coming together, they are talking, how are we going to make this space, how are we going to live together, and that's really an important thing, I think. And then also we have the Z example, and the Z example is more about sustainability, I think. It's more about, like, they make their own electricity, they make their own houses with trees, they have also their farms, they have bakeries, they have everything, so they don't need to go
self-reliant.
Yeah, self-reliant. They have everything, so that's really sustainable in a way.
To me, self-help housing is the most vague example, I think, because it's not about a building, but it's more about the community, I think, or how?
Well, I think it's actually a really great example, and I think that because it's many buildings around this New York City, and you wouldn't really notice it because it blends with all the other buildings. But what makes it so special is that these buildings were renovated by the owners themselves, because there was this really big abandoned crisis or housing crisis in the city where the government wouldn't want to take ownership of the buildings, and these people wanted affordable housing, and so they took action themselves and decided, okay, we're gonna renovate these buildings and we'll be the owners. And I think that also created a community within themselves.
And I think the example of that like what makes like really a community is the fact that they have one message that they want to spread, like they're protesting against the airport plans. Yeah, and that's like what really creates this community, because they all have the same message that they want to spread. They're all fighting for the same thing. So
and that's also seen in Casa Masdeo. They were peacefully protesting to not get evicted, and had an eviction issue between the hospital that was trying to own it and them living there illegally. And so they took it to court, and the judge overruled and said the right to live is more important than the right to own. And that's such a really impactful kind of
a big
statement. Yes. And even though now it's still kind of blurry with the situation, but they still live there, and they're still occupying the space, which says a lot about that. Do you think invisible architecture should continue?
I think it should, because back in the 80s in Amsterdam, in Grain Silo, for example, they created these ideas about sustainability, the environment, the white bicycle plan, for example. And these ideas are still coming back in the society of today.
And what is the white bicycle plan?
It was the white bicycle plan was a plan that was found by the provost, and they wanted free bikes for everyone in the city. But of course that was not possible because everyone would steal these bikes. But we can still see it in today's society, because we can find all these bikes in almost every city from firms like DOT, for example. So they had quite a big impact on the city. And I think if they don't continue to exist, then these ideas also might get lost, or new ideas for the future also might get lost. So I think it's important that they continue to
and
exist.
I think also it's really important to have that sustainability in our life, and to use like maybe secondhand materials.
And I think these are great examples to talk about, especially squatters, if we're talking there. I think in our time now, we're rethinking this idea of sustainability and how to think long term. And so looking at squatters and how they were self-reliant but also creative and sustainable at the same time. So this is really an important reason to why this invisible architecture should continue, like learning about squatters and how we can use their techniques today and have it evolve over time.
I think the most important thing that we want to show with this video is like unveil this side of architecture, because we always learn about structure and technical things, but it's also about history and emotions, and we quite often forget this side of architecture. So I think that's like the most important thing that we want to show now.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's a step back from all this highly driven, highly aesthetical, this Instagrammable type of architecture. We hope we show this side in our film that's very emotional, very community driven, very welcoming, but really doesn't compete with society standards. I think that's an important thing that I hope we can show in our film, that architecture doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be beautiful in its own way. I think it's unique spaces, it's unique cultures that brings out that beauty in it, that kind of raw beauty that we don't really see in our projects, in our architectural experiences that I hope we get to show in our film.
And I think I think the it's not about the structure, but it's more about the people inside the structure. The real focus should be maybe on the society and on the community living in the building, and about their emotions, and not just about the structure.
I think it's important that we show with this video that it's not only about negative things, because many people, if they think about squatting, they think it has like kind of a negative connotation, but there are so many beautiful things in it, and we can learn a lot from these communities. So I think that's like the main thing that we want to, that's like the main message that we want to spread.
Yeah, I think it's more, as we said, like the space is really important, and the feeling in that space, the memory, the history of each person. And we have to think about more than just building, and
I think a final message would be showing that invisible architecture is this humble practice that is led by locals that really are free to express themselves and are really self-reliant, and they just are a community that comes together, and they have a big impact on their environment, whether that's a community garden, it's an activist initiative, and so these individuals are kind of united together with a common good, almost representing a symbol for society, for kind of this silent impact to the world.